Welcome to another podcast. We have Brendan Pratt in the house here.
So what hit you first? The traffic, the noise, the pollution?
A bit of everything, I think.
Well, welcome. Thank you for coming and cooking at the Mama-san event, Nom Nom. We are super happy to have another WA chef, and you've had many accolades. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I guess super lucky to be here, and thanks so much for having us, and the team have been amazing. I guess my name's Brendan Pratt, Brio boy, born and bred, now live down in the southwest of the state, so down near Margaret River region. Yeah, I've worked in Perth for my apprenticeship and things, and then moved over to London, spent quite a few years in London, a little bit in France, and then moved back, and I was in Perth for a couple of years before moving down and taking a role down in the southwest and haven't looked back.
So what drew you back to WA?
I came back I was actually working in some chalets in the French Alps and was just having like an absolute ball, and was probably living a bit more than what I should have been at the time, having a bit too much fun, and came back to Perth for a little holiday, and Chris Taylor asked me to go, and I just wanted some shifts, I was back home for 3 or 4 weeks or something, and went and did a couple of shifts and was like, actually, maybe it's time to take a serious role. And he offered me a head chef role, and I was 27 or something, and I was like, this time.
Oh, great. Yeah. Great. Glad that Perth drew you back. Yeah. And, Perth is better for it. You've won a few accolades. Also, Vas Felix, best restaurant a few years in a row, I think.
Really lucky. We had a really good team. They still do, and they are cracking on like anything now. But working for Vas Felix was a part of my career, I guess, where I went from cooking and understanding a little bit about food, but then that was really what made me had to make my own style, create like something that was going to work with the wine. And I guess cooking to the wine was something that then made me have to pare back my food and give it a little bit of sensibility, rather than just going, I want to put everything in this.
So how do you find working for a winery? Not a lot of chefs get that opportunity. Some people may think it's the best opportunity, but when you're actually in it, are you confined to certain things and you don't have the freedom that perhaps you would do in the city?
Yeah, I think so. Like it's definitely the first thing I noticed was like, I sat down and did a full tasting with Ginny, with Virginia Wilcox, and it was like this massive, like my first day, been given this big induction, and then we sat down and it was like a 4-hour tasting with Ginny, and we went through all the wines and every little part of them, and I was making notes, and I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm way out of my depth. And at that point I was like, oh my God, I'm in a box. I can't get out of the box. How am I going to I can't use chili. I can't use any harsh vinegars. Everything has to be really balanced. And then I was like, actually, that's a really good format. If you can think outside the box and bring those elements in and sort of understand how you can use them. So like fermenting chili takes a little bit of that heat away, but gives you the nice flavour, and then you get acid that way rather than get like a natural acid, right? With umami and body to it, rather than using vinegar. But then you start using little bits like that through your dishes.
Were they really particular about what they could or what you could and couldn't do?
Yeah.
Like no chili?
No chili.
Got a job in a winery?
Yeah, exactly. That's why I'm here. Get to use some chili.
So someone that wants to go into a chef that wants to work in a winery, what's the best advice that you can give them?
Humble yourself. Yeah, I think you can see it as I ended up. First few months I was like, shit, I'm done here. Like this is, I'm going to get bored really quickly. This is going to really be, and then I just chose to see it as like a blessing. And you've got to really work so hard on each dish. You can't like just throw it on the menu and go and hope it works. You've really got to you've really got to analyze each element, and then that teaches you to be really restrained and really analyze everything that you're doing and make sure that it's going to work. And then multiple people taste your dish before it goes to the menu. Yeah. And so it does humble you, because you're like, this is fucking sick. Like, I've nailed this. And then 3 people with a really good palate are like, no. And you're like, oh. Okay. And so, and obviously then not only are you cooking for the wine, you're also cooking for a balanced menu. Like, you can't just have everything tasting the same. So you've got to find different ways of separating dishes, even though they might have similar flavor profiles. They've got to taste different in the end.
So you basically, best advice is leave your ego at the door.
Correct.
And come in super humble
Super
and
humble.
be prepared to learn from other people
Yeah.
that are not necessarily chefs,
No.
but have an amazing palate.
Yeah, and I think that was the biggest part for me was like training my palate to understand it.
Great. So while we're talking and on the topic of wines, part of what I try and do after working in WA for 3 years and running Will Street and having a business there, etc., is really to bring Western Australian wines, chefs, produce, and actually try and highlight it up here in Bali, because ultimately Perth is the second suburb of Bali, or vice versa. What's your opinion on WA wines in general? I mean, you've obviously worked in France, you've lived overseas, and you're well knowledgeable about wine now. What's your thought on actual Western Australian wine compared to the rest of Australia?
I think Australia as a total is really like jumping those levels, and I guess 30 years ago we were really not really on the spectrum and not considered, right? And especially in the last 10 years, it's really gained some notoriety, especially the Margaret River region. I'm pretty biased, obviously, living there, but it's now looked at as one of the premium spots in the world to grow wine. The climate's perfect. There's the sea breeze. And it's just like, it's unlike anywhere else. It's it's unique. It just brings everything. And so I guess like those wines on a world stage are now starting to get recognized. Like,
Yeah.
And even from really small producers, like some really good friends of ours, Trav and Liz, who run House of Cards, their Chardonnay just won Best in the World last year.
Oh, wow.
And it's like, they pick themselves, their kids help them pick. They do everything. They manage the vines, and they're not like super small yielding winery either. They're like quite, their volumes are reasonably high. And so for them to be able to do something like that just shows it.
Do you feel that Margaret River allows people to be bespoke and kind of smaller wineries can come in, where some of those older wineries like Barossa Valley, etc., or Adelaide, that there's a slight stigma of we've been doing it longer than you, so you can't touch it, and you find that in Margaret River it allows, or that whole a great southern region, it allows those smaller growers to kind of start, or I suppose like startups.
Yeah, I think so. And they can almost create their own style without having to fit a mold, I guess. And exactly what you're saying, it kind of gives a bit more flexibility. Sometimes we'd notice some people would come to the winery, some older diners would come to the winery and then not really enjoy our style, at Felix anyway, not enjoy the style of the Shiraz or something, because it's Margaret River. It's a bit lighter. It's a bit
younger.
More peppery. It's younger, yeah. And then it's not as big and bold as the Barossa Valley or something like that.
Yeah.
So I guess that they've each got their own kind of styles, but I guess Margaret River's been lucky in that region and the Great Southern, because they can I think a lot of the growers and the wineries are sort of finding that they just need to rather than trying to force the grapes to do something they don't want to do, they're just listening and going, okay, this is what the wine is going to make. This is the style it's going to make. So let's sort of honor it. And it's really the last 10 years has really seen that growth.
Oh, great.
So, yeah.
Well, we're super happy to have WA wines, and fortunate to have quite a lot of wines from WA up here in Bali. What ingredient are you now officially obsessed with that's Indonesian?
Well, I guess I'm only been here a couple of days this time, but something that has really hit me is a spice blend, the Bumbu Gede.
Yeah.
Have I said that?
Yeah,
correctly?
Bumbu Gede.
Bumbu Gede. And it's just seeing it being used makes me want to just put it in fucking everything that I'm eating it. So I think that would be something I make at home and put into my dinners. Yeah.
Is there one local dish that you've tried here that made you go, I'm going to mess with this in a good way?
I mean, apart from standard nasi goreng, I think that I've
Have you had the babi guling yet?
Yeah, I think that's what I'm looking forward to trying to do that. We've got this in one of the venues. It's portable, so we'll pop it outside. Coal rotisserie. Yeah. And so I'm quite keen to chuck a peek
one
on
dish
that.
you haven't. So you've arrived over Galawan, so that's why I'm putting it. So everything's been closed, so all the warungs are shut. But I think they're open today. So I have one dish that I do want you to try that we'll have for lunch maybe, and hopefully that goes on your list as well. What's one dish that you're proud of? The one that haunts you, that you're kind of irrationally proud of?
Irrationally proud of is probably the beef. We're actually going to cook that tonight. The short rib with the tomato exo and the beef fat milk, because it doesn't sound particularly inviting. Beef fat milk, I don't think it really, but there's no other way to really describe what sauce
Sounds
is.
Like P. Diddy and KY.
Yeah, it's not. When you write it on the menu, people are like, no thanks. But it's something that is like inherently delicious, I think, and it's been something that I guess I haven't been to. And the tomato XO is sort of something that I made out of want for matching with Cabernet, and sort of looked back into that lamb anchois where there's anchovies and there's a bit of tomato and there's garlic and protein, because I was just having trouble matching to our like the Vas Felix like really elegant Cabernet. And so when I sort of found this dish that was full of power and body of flavour, with anchovies and fermented tomatoes and lots of garlic, and then with the sort of with like a barbecued sort of beef that's finished over coals, really like came together. And then I just wanted something to lighten it up, and just like fuck it, just put some milk with it.
Yeah, amazing
dishes. Yeah,
can't wait to try it. What's your strategy when you're handed an ingredient you've never worked with but need to make it sing for the service?
I guess it's been really interesting being here. Like some of the dishes that we've got on the menu, like when we were chatting about it, you were like, oh, we want to see this dish from some of your other menus. And I was like, yeah, cool. And it's obviously like interesting because you come and you're used to working with like a particular fish, for example, or whatever, and then you come here and it's obviously very different, and you just need to sort of pay a bit of attention to what you're working with and look at how fatty maybe the fish is fatty, but it's similar in certain ways. And I guess just trying to analyze it as you're prepping and working with it, and be a little bit open to being a bit flexible with how you might need to change your recipes to deal with something that's more fatty, and so you need to add some more acid somewhere else, or it might be a little bit more strong, the beef might be stronger. So yeah, I think being open.
It's interesting. It's. I mean, I find it the hard thing for me when I go overseas, it's not so much about the protein and that, because that's always fairly amazing, and you can get all the standard veg and everything. But when it comes to turmeric, galangal, torch ginger, everything comes in frozen. It's not fresh.
Right.
So.
Well, I think
it doesn't, and it's a little bit like here. The proteins, etc., that you get here. Sometimes you get chilled meat, etc., but sometimes all the some really good quality meat is unfortunately frozen. So yeah, it is hard, I think, working, and this is working and doing collabs, especially overseas, where you can't prep in your restaurant and come over. So I mean, I think that's where the whole process for us is, and we're lucky in Bali, we can do that. Give you as many staff as you can have, so therefore you actually enjoy the experience and not kind of tear your hair out.
Yeah.
Talked about the other day, we do pull our hair out when you're left there with one dishy.
And then that really humbles you, because you're like, fuck, I really need my team.
Yeah.
And you're like, I wish I had them here. But I have not had that feeling once here. I've been treated like a king, and the staff have been phenomenal helping out. I kind of turn around and like, they're halfway through something, and I was like, I was going to show you. And it's done better than what you could have showed them, and they're like, I was super stoked. The guys have been fantastic.
Oh, great. Was there a dish you created for this takeover that made you rethink your own approach to refinement?
I guess as a whole, having done like these collab things before, like we were just talking about, understanding when to pare things back a little bit and just go like, I need to just be a little bit smart about the way you go about things. Like you might want to go a couple of extra elements here and there, but not only during the prep where you're trying to achieve a lot of things in a short amount of time. Some things you might start weeks in advance, but we just don't have that luxury. So kind of going, what's going to be the best? Like obviously fermented tomatoes normally at home we do for 7 to 8, 10 days, whereas here super lucky because 2 days later with the humidity they're ready to go. So that was something, I guess you go, I might have to rethink that, but then understanding the weather and the climate, you can change that one. But I think in general, pulling things back a little bit so that you can deliver a really well executed dinner rather than going gung-ho and then being the shit and everyone gets a shit experience and you pull your hair out and you're stressed and no one has a good time and the guests don't, you don't, the restaurant doesn't, no one wins, but you wanted to try and prove something. So I think there's no point, you're not here to prove something, you're here to have a good time.
It's simple, it's about having fun.
And I think I've learned probably more than the guys have, so
good. I'm glad. How did our team culture here compare with what you're used to being in Australia?
Number of staff is probably the biggest difference, but Perth is extremely tight for labour. Just a skill shortage in the first place. But
also, yes, chef. Getting on and doing it.
Yeah, that doesn't happen so much anymore.
No.
And the willingness for all the guys here to learn and to just jump at an opportunity to do something different, I think has been like really a big difference. And I don't want to like talk down about the Perth and the teams. We have great teams in the restaurants, and and we are very lucky, but there has been times where I've been places where people would rather, if it's something different, they're a little bit more happy to step back and watch rather than sort of get involved. It's something different. Maybe it's the openness to change and to do something different is sometimes something
also,
that maybe holds us back.
I mean, like what I find is also people just don't want to work at 8 o'clock in the morning and finish at midnight.
Yeah,
and they go,
it's not a
no,
thing.
I'm only rusted on for 8 hours. It's like, but the whole process of that beef that we do starts at 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
Do you want to be part of it or not? And that's where, I think the guys here are a lot more willing to be that. And what I find is that the guys here are a lot more willing to learn, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they want to go off and be head chefs and go off and be they just want to learn and they just love having a foreigner come in and see something different that you do, that what we don't do. Like the beef fat, they're like, oh my god, this is amazing, this is great. Will, look at this, we should do something like this, etc. And their eyes like kind of pop out, which I love. And that's for me the whole point of bringing people like yourself over, is to be able to give them a different experience, because a lot of them won't get that chance. They don't leave Bali. They'll never leave Bali. They don't want to. And so for them to have imports come in and be able to show them a few things, gives them, it's just something different. They get bored of me. And so, as they should do. So thank you for that. What part of Indonesian food culture do you wish more Western chefs understood or respected more?
Probably a respect and an understanding of the basics, like the things that everyone does that you need for most dishes that can't be rushed and that have to be executed well, otherwise the rest of the dishes no. Like just seeing the care in the kitchen, went downstairs when I was down there prepping in the pastry section, and the guys on the lines, just everything is like, even just making sure things are sweated and the temperature's turned down properly when they were sweating their basic vegetables down for, I guess it was a curry paste maybe or something that was being made. And it was like just that respect, to not just go, I'll just chuck it on high and that's fine, walk away. There's that like attention to detail with the small things that really matter, and you don't need to just, once you get those right and you understand them, then you can move more exciting things. And I guess like there's an expectation, I don't know why, maybe media or something, but there's an expectation from young chefs now that they can, like you're saying, they can jump and they can be a head chef. All I want to do is get to the point where they're a head chef. And you're like, even now I'm like, I was 27 when I took my first head chef job, which at the time was probably somewhat young, but not. And now it's like, if you're not a head chef at 24, people are like, why aren't I a head chef yet? I haven't been. And you're like, fuck, you're 24. Like,
and then the hard thing is that there's nothing wrong with being a head chef at 24, but then you're just teaching yourself. Like, you're not learning from other people, and that's a skill set that I wish that I had perhaps taken on more, was being a head chef a little bit later. I wish I was a head chef at 28, 29 and actually had that time to be able to do that. But I think everyone's rushing for the money. It's not only the fame, but everyone's also rushing. No one wants to be on a casual salary, and everyone wants to, well, not everyone, but to get a full-time head chef wage, which is not great anyhow. And that's sort of the pinnacle of their career. That's the element that they don't understand. They can cook well, but the next stage is actually understanding how to actually run the business. Yeah, and you don't get that. That's not a training that you get, especially managing people. I think is the hardest thing, and everyone will say that, but it's the part that is the most draining. It takes the most work. Okay, a couple more things. We do street food here. What's something that you envy about street food? Because you do things at a much sort of higher level. You're more on a fine dining level, rather than sort of smart casual, which is what sort of we are. What are some of the limitations that you feel being at that level compared to maybe just being honest with what you personally want to do? I don't know. And you're in that job now. Yeah, I am, and I'm very lucky in the job I'm at now. We have sort of a refined, I guess, higher fine dining-ish end restaurant, and we have pubs, and we've got somewhere in the middle. Something about my own sort of dishes and cooking, I guess I envy the fact of the honesty that is in street food and your food here. It's just delicious. Like there isn't
There doesn't have to be any faff. There doesn't have to be a specific technique involved to make people go, "Oh, that's fancy." It's just fucking good. And it's tasty, and like that's the essence of food, right? And sharing dishes with people and being in an environment where when you're just at a table and you don't have to analyze it when it comes in front of you and be like, "Oh, that's fancy. I wonder how I do that. Where do I start?" It's just like, just dig in, and it's fucking tasty, and you can have an ice cold beer with it, and everything's great. Or you can have a fantastic Chardonnay, and it's still good. It doesn't matter. It's just
okay, great. Ever had a moment in the kitchen? I think we discussed this the other night, where you're seriously like, "I'm fucking done. I'm done. I'm walking out. I'm over it." And what's brought you back in?
It was probably like 4 days ago. I wanted to do something that was, I guess a mate hit me up and said, "Oh, hey, at LS Merchants, we're doing we've got a little food truck and we're going to have fun. It's Easter Monday, probably won't be that busy. Do you want to do something?" And I was like, "Yeah, cool, it'd be fun." And I stupidly wrote the most ridiculous menu to try and pull off out of a food truck. And now that I look back at it, I was like, "You idiot." Like normally I'd like to say that I'm reasonably humble in that regard, but definitely not in that instance. And I thought I could do it by myself. And as we lifted the door of the food truck, I could see a line of like 200 people waiting to order, and we weren't open, and I was like, "I'm fucked." And I hadn't even started, and my stress levels just went up, and I was like shaking. And then the orders started coming in, and I could see I had like a pass with probably 10 orders on it, and I could see a stack of like paper. And my wife Courtney was on the till taking the orders, and she was just looking at me like, "Do you want me to keep taking orders?" And I was like, "You fucking have to. They're there. Like, we got to feed them." Your head's in that space where you can't think straight, and all I wanted to do was like just close the front door of the thing, and we'll just take a minute and go home, and everyone will be fine. But just powered through. And once you get through it, like the best feeling, and people waited a long time, and I'm very grateful that they did and didn't complain, but they were super stoked with the food. And and when you're getting that feedback for something that you've created and you've worked very hard to do all the prep for, and your wife's with you, and that's amazing. Then you're chatting with people, and they loved it and had a great time. It's that really nice feeling inside where you're like, I've fed people and I've given some people some joy from some hard work,
and that brings you back.
And then he brings you back.
You've mentioned young chefs. What's one of the hard truths that they usually can't handle?
I guess I'm lucky to work with a group of guys as well at the party group that I'm with now, that are very hardworking, and there's a lot of guys in there that do understand this. But I have worked with people where they want that fame and they want the salary and they want it now. And I guess, and they're like, "I've done my time. I worked 60, 70 hour weeks, 3 years straight, mate." And you're like, fucking 3 years, nothing. But you have to be understanding that 3 years is still something, but it's like, I guess they don't understand the fact that time is time, and you can't speed that up, and you can't grow experience quicker. You just have to do it. And I guess the more time you spend, exactly what you were just saying, the more time you spend learning from someone that is good at what they do, the better you will be later. But when you get to but if you rush it and you get there and then you've got no one to learn from, you're the one that's going to suffer, no one else. Find something that you're passionate about, a restaurant that makes you excited, and go and cook that food. And then once you've done that for a little while, find something else and go and do that. And you should be lucky that you're young enough to be able to have this. I wish now I could go and do that. I'm so lucky I get to come here, and I ate at Mama Son 10 years ago and loved it, and I'm now lucky to be on the other side with you and get to be in the kitchen learning from you and your team. And that's how I grow now. But I don't get the chance to just go, "Fuck it, I'm going to go work in Copenhagen." I can't do that. I've got kids, I've got a wife, and I've got a life and mortgage and the rest of it, and so you just can't do that. So I think people understanding patience, and that they've got the flexibility at a young age to go and do something. When I went to London, I thought I was I won Young Chef of the Year award, and I thought I was hot shit. And I went to London and very quickly realised that I was nothing, and that I was right back at the bottom of the food chain. And I was like, I should probably be in the dishes, and that guy should be here, because I was that bad. And I was oh. And I think that experience of doing that made humbled me enough. If I'd not left Perth, I think I probably would have not. I don't even know if I'd still be cooking.
The last thing I would say is, anyone that's coming to Perth, please, what are the restaurants that you work with and work for on the Parker Group?
Yeah.
And give them a big shout. What are they?
So we've got In the city itself, we've got the Royal, which is a nice old heritage building right smack bang in the centre across from Yagan Square. And that's a really nice old pub with just good beers, really good cocktails. Downstairs, we've got Willie's, which is a deep dish Detroit-style pizza joint with wines and dirty cocktails and martinis, and it's a bit grungy and a little bit louder music. And then we've got Fleur, which is across the hall, and that's our sort of refined diner, which is sort of a mod Oz cuisine, I guess, in the best way, using some classical techniques with some ingredients. We kind of cook a little bit more towards the wine with this as well, and we're lucky to work with some great local wineries and down from Margaret River. And Logan cooks an amazing menu in there with the team. In Northbridge, we've got the Standard, which has just been sort of revamped for its 10 years. It's more towards bar food, and we try and lots of cocktails in there, and Phil, the bartender's weapon there, and Nick, the head chef, is great. And that little team there's only a couple of them, and they bang it out, and they're amazing. And then we've got Dandelion, which is up in Karrinyup. And then we've got down in Bustleton, we've got the Bustleton Pavilion, which is got a wine store there, and it's a pub, but we're sort of cooking traditional Australian pub fare, but with a bit of our sort of spin on it.
And where's the most places people are likely going to see you?
I'm based out of Bustleton,
Down in Busso.
So come down and see me in Busso. Yeah.
Listen, well, thank you so much for coming up here. Thank you for cooking. We're really looking forward to the event, and I'll be looking forward to cracking open a nice beer afterwards.
Yeah, can't wait. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Cheers.